So to kick off 2018, the Huffington Post listed 29 things that we need to care about in 2018. Yeah. So they said it ranged from the people of Puerto Rico to having difficult conversations with people you may disagree with. What do you think people need to keep their eye on?
Well, today, I would tell you that these protests going on in Iran are really important. There's very little that, we can do as citizens, but it's very important to express solidarity with what's going on there. It's awe-inspiring. This is an autocratic regime. They are cruel. They've opened fire on these protests. There's now dozens of dead. You've seen the most inspiring visuals come out of there. Things like women standing up and refusing to wear the veil. Just, protesting, and you cannot stifle freedom for that long. At some point, hope will come back up. And so we've got to keep an eye on it. Iran protests, hashtag.
Of course, they told Donald Trump to stay out of it and not to tweet. Of course he did, because telling him not to tweet is like telling a 5-year-old not to eat the candy. He can't help himself. He had to stick his 2 cents in it. Talking about just mind your own, stay where you are in Mar-a-Lago, keep playing golf.
I actually think it's important for the President of the United States, and not just him. I think President Obama, I think President Bush should all express solidarity. What I didn't like him doing was turning this political by taking a shot at Obama and the Iran deal. There's a time and a place for that. Right now is the time and place to express solidarity.
Why does he always have to
The Iran deal gave more money to terrorism and nuclearize the Middle East. It's the main of all the things President Obama did that I disagree with. That was number one. And I actually think it's fine for the I'm much more comfortable with the president tweeting about what's going on in Iran than Mika Brzezinski's alleged facelift, quite frankly. So we need to dictate what we want him to tweet about, because again, when you're talking about international incidents like this, which are of extreme historical significance right now, I think it's 100% totally fine.
I thought it was the Saudis who were really protecting terrorists. 9/11 came from there. Those terrorists came from Saudi Arabia. He's in bed with the Saudis all the time. So,
to me right now, we really have to keep our focus on Iran, because if somehow they're able to get themselves free from these chains that bind them from this autocratic regime, it would be a huge game changer the world over.
And I think that's true in this country also. We can get away from him.
What's important, I think what's been striking to me, and we don't have the video, but of the woman standing in the public square taking off her hijab, which is truly a statement, because what's supposed to be empowering for Muslim women about wearing the hijab is your decision to do it or not. That's a very personal decision by most Muslim women. And in the United States, you have the decision to do that. In Iran, you must wear the hijab. Also, and so I think and they talked about the Me Too movement. What was so interesting is the movement that you've seen here across the United States by women. The women in Iran are saying, I want my freedom too. And I just think that is so powerful. So powerful.
I just think having any kind of conversation about moral relativism in a country where we couldn't be sitting here without our heads covered, where gay people are literally murdered and stoned to death in the same streets, and comparing it somehow to what's going on in the United States of America, for me, when we have these conversations somehow comparing the United States to Iran, that's where I end conversations and where I just leave, because I think it's ridiculous. But you just said we need to rise up against Trump in the same way like Ayatollah Khomeini is somehow morally relative to President Trump. I think that's right.
It's not apples and apples. It's not equal. But we're on a very slippery slope in this country toward throwing democracy out the window every single day.
We have to defend the freedom of the press and civil rights here.
We do, but we're not being stoned in the street for being gay.
Not yet.
They're completely, they're different things. I agree with you. I think the Ayatollah is in a completely different league. That being said, that doesn't mean that we don't stand up for our own rights, right?
It's a relative thing. It's not the same thing. It's something else. We have other reasons to protest in the streets in this country. And not the same as the hijab, and not the same as what the kind of thing we're talking about in Saudi Arabia and Iran. But we definitely have things to stand up against in this country right now.
And I think, it's sort of important. I think it's important to note that what is going on in Iran, one of the bases is people are protesting that they don't have the economic freedom that they need, that there's been a rise in cost for basic necessities, and 20 protesters have already been killed by the government. And so their right to protest is under attack. And that's the one thing that Trump did that I thought, well, if he weighed in about the protesters, in support of the protesters. And
Well, that was nice.
I thought that was
nice of her.
That was
I wish
okay.
he would also give that when people are protesting here.
January
Be
20th.
supportive,
January
you know,
20th.
and
There's
be
a women's
supportive.
march in New York City. Let's see what he says about the protesters in New York on January 20th.
Yeah.